All right. Here we are for this week's Hard Hat Highlights, where we go over some of the trending headlines and topics that are on the World Wide Web, and we do a quick little recap of anything that interesting that happened to us during this week at work. And this week, Mr. Jason Ryback, my counterpart here, had the pleasure of doing a staycation with his family at a local hotel and noticed some glass materials that he'd like to talk about. So, Jay, why don't you start us off? And first of all, how was the vacation?
It was amazing. I will say if you can splurge on a vacation, definitely do it because it's well worth it.
Why do you say that?
It's just different. You're treated different.
You're going a little bit above...
Go a little bit above and beyond.
What you would normally do.
Correct.
And so you saw the benefits, for the most part, whether it's dining, customer service, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. What did you see that has to do with our business that was concerning?
So naturally, just like you do, I'm sure, every time I stay at a hotel, which is quite frequent, I take notice of the glasswork. It's something that we do as Glazers.
Can't help it.
And so this particular hotel had undergone a major renovation a few years ago, and we actually had bid on it. And so we know that it wasn't necessarily the quality or service that they chose, but more the price that was chosen by the particular contractor. And this is a testament to why you never do that.
How were you able to identify that it was based on price?
Well, the first giveaway to me was the appearance. The materials that were used, they were glass-to-glass hinges, and the doors were extremely wide to accommodate a ADA opening, handicapped opening. And so whenever you're using glass-to-glass hinges, and for those of you that don't know, it's a door that's mounted to a stationary panel, and the hinges clamp to both pieces of glass.
Like a compression fitting.
Correct. So the only thing holding that glass in place is it's sandwiched in between the two parts of the hinges.
Right.
The problem with that is the weight at the top of the door wants to pull away from the stationary panel. So there was two things that happened with that. So there was channel at the top, down the side, and at the bottom of the stationary panel, and the panel was not very neatly siliconed into place. At the end, they put these end caps, which there's a little tab that comes off of it, and a screw goes into it. That's actually supposed to be hidden inside of the
turned
channel.
it around backwards?
It was turned around backwards, almost like using it to hold the panel from pulling out.
You know that's what it was.
Yes. So there was that.
Where was the glass from?
The glass was not from...
Was it from the Far East?
It was from Asia.
Yeah.
It was from Asia, yes.
And now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad glass for all you people out there, but typically when you see glass that's been tempered in Asia to come over here, the only reason why someone would buy tempered glass in bulk from the Far East is to save money. That's the only reason.
That's right. So there was those first few things, but the one thing I noticed was the glass-to-glass hinges in the width of the door, because, again, pulling down from the top, as the door gets wider, there's more and more weight further away from the panel.
It's cantilevered out.
Correct. So I looked at everything, and there was no sweep on the bottom of the shower door, and I noticed as you swing out, it was real tight. I mean, like you couldn't even see daylight in between the glass and the floor, and it had already been chipped once.
So you already know it's been rubbing.
It's already been rubbing, yes.
Which is a huge liability, because anybody that doesn't know, tempered glass, the most sensitive parts of tempered glass are the edges.
In the corners.
Yeah.
Yes. So there was that. Across the room, there was a water closet that had a privacy glass. It, too, was Asian glass. Same setup. It was a panel and then a larger door. And that door didn't look as bad. However, second day there, one of my daughters was in the bathroom and came out and said, why is the door making a squeaking noise? Luckily, they said something because the top of the door had sagged and was rubbing on the granite wall, which we know, again, is another boo-boo. So I notified one of the head custodians there. And at the time when I notified them of that, because I was aware of it, you know, I put towels over the edge, and it was fine for the rest of our stay. We were only there for a couple of days, but I notified them, and I also showed them the shower door at the same time. Well, when I went to show them the shower door, which was our last morning there, it too was rubbing. So
the glass was rubbing either against another glass panel or the substrate in itself. Either way, it's bad.
Right. Yes, and the reason why it's bad, like Keith mentioned, the edges and the corners are the most fragile parts. So if somebody is unknowing and they either swing it really fast or they force it, that door's going to end up at a million little pieces.
Yeah, it'll explode. It's tempered.
And you're going to look like a pincushion.
And not only that, people that are usually on vacation aren't as cautious to grab and touch and pull things.
Oh, no.
Because it's not theirs.
Especially if they spend time down at the lobby bar.
Yeah, they're at the bar, they're having cocktails, you jump in the shower, you're hurrying up. You're not thinking, you're not in the shower door business. Why would you even think this is a high-end hotel? Why would there be a problem?
Which is another reason why I wanted to make the hotel aware too, because they could end up having a lawsuit on their hand.
We've seen this. We've been called in as expert witnesses.
That's right.
On situations like this, so we are aware of that. So kudos to you for bringing that to our attention. Did he seem appreciative or?
He was very appreciative and also slightly shocked. I explained to him why that was happening and what needed to be done, and he was very thankful.
Well, that's cool. Did you leave him a card?
That was my good deed for the year.
Yeah, it was.
One a year.
Did you leave him a card?
Of course.
Let's go.
Of course.
So that's interesting. When I go to hotels back in the day before social media was a thing, the first thing I would do after seeing if they had a frameless shower door in the room and critiquing the shit out of it would then be to go in between the two beds and pull out the phone book and to see all the shower door companies in that area, just because I wanted to see what their advertisements look like. Like, those are things that I just would do all the time.
Yeah.
And it's because my father did it and I did it and you do it.
Yep.
So that's just something that we do. But good for you for looking out. That leads us into, again, here on this platform, we are talking about some things that we come across in our day-to-day business, but also trending and kind of topics that you see all over social media. And one that happened this week here in Collier County was a large sting operation with a couple different government agencies on busting a lot of these massage parlors. Back to the Asian contingency again.
Lower body massage.
Yeah, the stress reliever girlfriend experience. There was over 20 of these massage parlors in Collier County alone.
20 arrests, so 11.
Yeah, but 20 different
parlors.
locations. Or is it
11 parlors and 20 arrests, yes.
11 parlors, 20 arrests. And I've always had a problem with these. I don't know why it took so long to get up to this point where this has happened. I know the first time that I was kind of impacted by this was about 8 years ago. A couple of these Johns wouldn't even be parking out in front of the strip mall. They would go around the back because they knew they were doing something nefarious.
Yeah.
But one of them ended up taking one of my parking spots. So I made sure to stand there with my camera and wait for him to come out. It turns out he was only in there for 7 or 8 minutes. So it was a quick massage. Yeah. But that tailored into my frustration, not only with the landlord, but the county. Like, how is this even legal? Meanwhile, we're remodeling our showroom and we had a delayed on our certificate of occupancy because, we didn't have a fire extinguisher. Meanwhile, there's sex trafficking going on down here for years, and they have spread everywhere. These things are everywhere.
Yeah, well, if you look at the addresses where a lot of these places were, it's like they're probably a quarter mile away from one another, based
There's
on
clusters
the numbers.
of them. Yeah, 100%. I don't know how this business has got along as far as it has. I know it happens to be one of the oldest or the oldest business in history of prostitution. But in this day and age with all the government regulations and code requirements and licenses needed to operate a business, how has it continued to do that for this long?
It's amazing that it doesn't happen more often where they do these things because they know damn well what's going on in there. I mean, if the list prices are lower than they appear, they're making money somehow.
100%. So a couple of the government employees must have been interviewing a lot of the people within the strip mall. And they were giving us some information, but what ended up happening was a couple people had contacted the Board of Health. And that's what really started. I guess the Board of Health and the human trafficking element are somehow situated with each other. And then it became a priority for the law enforcement to get involved. I think there was 3 different, alphabet agencies that were involved in this. I don't know if it was DEA or the regular county police and a couple other.
You're telling me they don't dispose of the bodily fluids in a sanitary way?
No, I don't know what the hell's going on in there. All I do know is if somebody was to go into one of these units now that they're closed, I would burn the place. Not fumigate, I would burn it and then remodel it for sure.
It's interesting though that not enough of this has happened where people have been busted for this because of the impact it has on the other businesses.
I agree.
I mean, there's not just the coming and going of unscrupulous figures, but it's also you're getting customers that may not want to show up because they realize that
they know what's going on in there, and if there's another business near there, I don't want to be there because I don't want to be caught up in whatever nefarious things are going on there. That's a good point. So shame on the county for taking this long, but kudos to finally doing something, and hopefully it stays that way, especially for some of the workers. I know a lot of these people might be imported in from other countries thinking they're coming here to chase and live a better life, but get put into a situation where they don't know anybody, they don't have any money, and they're basically, sex traffickers, and they're trapped.
Right.
So I was happy to finally see that. And of course, the one thing that I really enjoyed about this, if you Google it and you look at, I think NBC2 News did one, Wink did one, you look at those Facebook posts or Instagram posts and start reading the comments. I mean, if you don't have anything to do tonight when you see this, just look it up, Collier County sting on massage parlors, and get into one of the posts and just read the comments. You will be laughing your ass off. So that leads us into the next topic. Jay, why don't you bring us into the Lightning work truck?
So yeah, I've encountered this work truck. I think the gentleman may even live in my neighborhood, for a local builder that we've done some business with. And I've been behind him a couple times, and I happen to notice that his work truck is an F-150 Lightning.
It's a Ford F-150.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, that is an electric vehicle.
Right.
So I started thinking about it, and like, what is the feasibility of an electric vehicle in the construction business? Because you got to remember, a lot of times these guys they're going job to job. They're on job sites when the house is just coming out of the ground. There's no electricity. The only way you're getting electricity is by generator, which kind of defeats the purpose of the environmentally friendly electric vehicle. It was just an odd thing for me to see, and I didn't. I started thinking more and more about the whole electric vehicle thing, and it just, nothing against them. Kudos to people who have them. It's not for everyone, and I think that there's a lot of overlooked things about that, such as where the hell do you charge this thing, and what's powering, what's charging it. But also here in Florida, you've got lines for charging. You and I talked about this. You said you saw lines out there.
I saw a post on Instagram. I don't remember where it was, but it was somewhere where there was a charging station. And this charging station maybe had 20 charging units. Mm-hmm. And the person that was filming this kind of filmed all the cars. Obviously, they're all Teslas. And there was about 4 or 5 of these Cybertrucks. And so they were all full. And then there was a line like going to Chick-fil-A, waiting in line to get the next available charger. And he went up and interviewed a guy in a Cybertruck that was currently charging. He says, how long is this going to take to charge? He said, 55 minutes. The next guy in line was in a Cybertruck. So let's just break that down. I know I usually don't get fuel till there's about a mile or 2 left. And I'll pull into the next gas station and I'll fill it up, and it'll take 4 or 5 minutes and I'm gone. A guy in a Cybertruck is waiting 55 minutes to charge it. And if somebody's in front of him already on that charger, You're waiting 55 minutes, and then I need to do another 55 minutes just to charge my own. Who the hell's got time for that?
Well, there's not only that. Think about that. That's on daily life. We're here in Florida. Matter of fact, we have a storm coming this way this weekend. There are sometimes evacuation orders. Hurricane Ian, we went through, there was evacuation orders. People, 75 is a fucking parking lot as it is. So imagine being in an electric vehicle. You run out of current. Where do you go? You're a sitting duck.
Sitting duck. And by the way, what happens when it really starts raining? Some of these low spots here in Florida, luckily we have big pickup trucks where if there's 8, 10 inches of water, 12 inches of water, we can still kind of muddle through it, but not in one of those electric vehicles. I can't imagine. Aren't all the batteries along the bottom too, underneath the seat?
I'm not sure where they are, but I know they have. After Ian, they had a lot of problems with the salt water getting into them. There was explosions.
And those type of fires on those things weren't like a traditional fire. I mean, they were burning, like hard time to even put out the fire.
There was one here, you saw it. It was out front, and it made Fox News.
Yeah, it's hard to put out the fire, so they burn hard.
What I would like to know, though, is aside from all of this, I'm curious to what the economic impact was to the gas stations. And I'm not looking just from a fuel perspective. I'm talking, these people aren't going to gas stations, right? They're going to their charging stations. So
there's no convenience stores there. Yeah.
Right. Are they still stopping at a convenience store to
get a can of chew or something to drink, something to eat? That's not even happening anymore. You're right.
Right.
So there's an economic impact on the other side of that. Brandon, I believe from GCS out in Arizona, has a couple, maybe one or two electric. We have the Ford Transits. I think there's a electric version of that vehicle, and he has a couple. I can't remember if he said he's in love with them or not.
We're going to have to ask him about that.
I'm almost certain he told me if he had to do it again, he probably wouldn't because of the range. The range on a full battery isn't anything that wouldn't satisfy where they deliver, but you have to go back. You're driving back and forth every 2 days. Somebody's got to go and sit somewhere to charge this. They got to remember to plug it in.
Well, and do the batteries start to lose range over time?
I know that happens on, back in the day when we were charging our cordless drills.
Well, it happens with golf carts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
that's interesting. So are you going to be getting an electric vehicle anytime soon?
Yeah, golf cart.
Yeah. How about, I really am interested to hear about this, the longest running Ponzi scheme. And that's in the history of the United States?
Do you know what that longest running Ponzi scheme in the history of the United States? I'm sure you have a guess right off the bat.
My guess is Amway. I consider that a Ponzi. If I got this, you can start buying all these products and you got to pay me $300 to have access to this. And if you get 5 of your friends to pay $300, and it's kind of this pyramid.
Right.
I call it a Ponzi scheme, pyramid scheme, if you will.
I think a lot of people would immediately jump to Bernie Madoff.
Well, that one as well, too.
Bernie Madoff, I believe, was...
But for how long was he?
The costliest, there was the most amount of money involved.
But how long was he running that Ponzi? Was he ever legitimate during that? Or was it artificial the whole time?
I don't know. I'd be lying if I said I did. But I happened to watch a documentary this last week, and I had no idea that it was going to turn into finding out that this was the longest running Ponzi scheme in U.S. history.
Oh, do tell.
30 years.
30-year Ponzi scheme.
Let me see if you can figure out who this is. A gentleman named Lou Pearlman.
Oh, that name sounds familiar.
So this was here in Florida, in Orlando. Lou Pearlman was the gentleman who found Backstreet Boys.
Oh, yes, the manager.
And several other boy bands.
Yes.
And
that's right.
The way it had started out is he was actually involved in aviation. That's what he was interested in. And he was in New York City at the time, and he got involved with building blimps. And he started getting investors, which were mostly mob-tied investors, were pumping money in because they liked the guy. And he started getting, his first big thing was the McDonald's blimp. He had the McDonald's blimp. Then he started getting like MetLife and other things like that. And then after several years, he had a run where a few of them were catching fire and crashing, mostly on their maiden voyages, but he was collecting the insurance money.
Oh.
And then he fled to Florida. Still nobody knew anything was going on. So he went down there and he discovered, he started Backstreet Boys and recruiting these young kids and whatever. And they were making all this money. And then they finally got their first check. And the first check was $10,000.
The band.
And
I call it a band.
Yeah.
Boy band.
So one of the guys, I forget which one. No,
Lance Bass.
That's NSYNC.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I shouldn't know that. So one of the guys says, "Oh my God, this is the most money I ever had in my life." It was Howie, who I think used to come to Naples a lot.
Yeah.
The most money I ever had in my life. And one of the other guys said, "How much money were you making at Outback in a year?" And then he said, "Well, something's going on." So then that's when the lawsuits started. They broke away. And it turns out what was happening is he'd bring all these bands everywhere to like these events, and he'd make them perform for these investors. And he was promising returns for the investors, but never giving any money back. And he just kept on robbing Peter to pay Paul, and eventually got caught and died in prison.
But it took 30 years. I mean, think about that.
30
That's
years.
a long time of playing a shell game.
Yeah, it's so this documentary, some of you may have heard of it, is on Netflix called Dirty Pop. I think it's Netflix or maybe it's Hulu. Dirty Pop.
Dirty Pop.
I only watched it because the wife started watching it, and as I got into it, I'm like, you know what, this is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I gotta watch it. Dirty Pop.
Yep.
And so Lou Pearlman, now that you say that, I can see him because I've seen some of the documentaries when like NSYNC when they were younger or Backstreet Boys, and he would take them around to high schools, and then it would graduate more to like maybe a Busch Gardens or in a Universal on one of those side stages, and slowly started moving upward. But he was able to monetize all those situations for himself, telling them that these were investor meetings or auditions, if you will.
Here's the best part about it. When he first got sued, he came to a settlement where the band paid him $64 million. And you're going to ask why.
Why?
When he made these kids sign the paperwork, they didn't realize that when they were signing up, he was signing up as the fifth member of the band. So he was entitled to all the pay of the members in addition to his management fees and all the other shit he was stealing.
He was just skimming every way possible.
I mean, kudos to him. It was kind of brilliant, but obviously shady.
Kudos to him.
I mean, here's this fucking 300-pound, balding man that's like, I'm in a boy band.
You know what the problem with that is? And I can see where it would be easy to, right? Because you're in the band, you're the talent. You started from nothing, and you're so excited to know that you have the possibility of making money off of going around and singing and being treated like a celebrity that you're probably not really focused enough to get into the weeds with all the paperwork and legalities. You hear this all the time with...
Well, you're a kid. You're so excited.
So excited. And you hear story after story about bands being taken advantage of. Elvis was another one. There's endless amounts of stories where you sign they say they sign these contracts and you don't make money for the first few records. They give you an advance, but you have to pay the advance back through these concerts and merch.
Yeah, it's
a dirty business.
Yeah, it gets them so confused that they're kind of like, okay, well, I'm making money. I'm okay.
I wonder how the birth of social media has been able to kind of turn the table on these artists being taken advantage of by these producers or record executives, because now you see a lot of people start singing online, and all of a sudden, they come out with a song and it blows up and it's trending in all these reels, and before you know it, they're able to monetize it through the platforms themselves, not even going to a record label.
Well, not only that, but just all the funny stuff is now easily exposed, whereas before it'd have to travel through the grapevine to
we
out
wouldn't hear about
on.
it. Yeah, because nobody's taking the selfie videos behind the curtain to see what's going on.
Last thing before we move on that, You know what his ultimate downfall was? When he got that $64 million settlement, he owed his lawyer, I think it was $16 million. Well, he never paid him. So the lawyer was like, you son of a bitch, I'm going to get you. And the lawyer started the investigations and really...
So the band was never caught wind of that. It was the lawyer. And that is the perfect definition for the old adage, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. And it's just never enough. You had to take a little bit more, and you did it. You know, you just never know. There's always going to be one person that's smarter than you.
Yep.
So speaking of money and investments, why don't you break down this other stat that you saw? Because we talk a lot about the economy now and maybe why is it softening up? Well, maybe it's an election year.
That's 100% something that you and I even say it quite a bit because we're trying to figure out why is the economy different right now. I'm sure a lot of you have seen through your business, you know, maybe business is a little weird, maybe not necessarily slow, but kind of ebbs and flows. It's just different. Something is different out there.
Far different from a year ago.
Yeah, and it's hard to put your finger on it. So I think the crutch has always been, well, it's an election year, and that's been this thing that, you know, consumer confidence is not up in an election year traditionally. Come to find out, the Booth School of Business at University of Chicago, a very prestigious business college, did a study and determined that that's not the case at all, that consumer spending is relatively close in an election year to any other year, which I found odd. But I did see something online, and I started to dive a little bit more, and I thought it was pretty interesting.
Do tell.
So most of us have 401ks and or stocks, and the average annual return on a stock in a given year is 9.9%.
Wait, the average return on a stock or an investment or 401k or just
on stocks and 401ks are typically made of, you know, stocks, mutual funds, et cetera. So your average annual return in the stock market, let's say, is 9.9%.
Okay.
In an election year, the average annual return is actually higher.
What is it?
It's 11.2%.
Okay, so in a non-election year, which is 3 years,
yes,
the average return was 9.9%.
That's right.
But in an election year, that fourth year, it's actually higher at 11.2%.
Yeah.
So this fallacy of, well, the economy's got to be a little slower, consumer confidence is slow because it's an election year, actually is not the case.
That's right. So now take it a step further. What do you think the average annual return for 2024 currently sits at?
I have no idea. 10%.
14.3%.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
So this has been a good year for the market.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Now, historically speaking, there's been way more. In the best ever in election year was in 1928 when Herbert Hoover was elected.
What was that?
43.6%.
Come on.
I mean, can you imagine
Anybody
401k?
was in the market or investing in your retirement plan in 1928 received a rate return of 43.6%.
Yeah.
How do we get him back in office?
Oh, shit.
Was he a Republican or Democrat?
He was a Republican.
Okay.
Now, conversely, the worst ever
Yes.
was at a negative 37%.
What year?
2008.
That was Democrat.
That was a Democrat, yes.
Obama. So it sounds like those. Is there any other information based on political parties, if that has any effect on there?
It does show to have effect on there. So when a Democrat is elected, in the election year itself, the typical annual average return is 7.8%.
And this is historical data based on all the election years.
That's correct.
So when a Democrat has been elected to office, since our whole democratic process has been started, they've saw a rate of return of 7.8.
Yes.
What is it when a Republican was put in office?
15.3.
forget about all the other nonsense about what side you're on or let's just talk about the money. Our hard-earned money that we work for when we retire so we can enjoy ourselves, on the whole, as average, is double the rate of return when a Republican is put in office.
Yeah.
What else do you need to know?
Well, and I think that's the stat you need to look at as opposed to the 43.6% in 1928 and the negative 37 because
Well, that's easy, but those are the extremes.
Well, because 2008, you can look at, okay, we're on the cusp of the housing
market.
bubble.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
You know, there was always some sort of
course.
Any of these negative years, that is another thing. If on any of these negative years, there was always some sort of
catalyst or
yeah. So like, you know, you're talking about the housing bubble,
Great Depression.
The Great Depression. Yeah.
Now, conversely, you probably had something on the opposite end of that for the highest year. So let's take those two out of it.
Right.
So let's just look at the average altogether.
Yeah, you got to look at the mean.
The Republican nominee that was elected, on average, over the entire course of our democracy, has seen a rate of return double of which a Democrat when is elected, from 15.3 to 7.8.
This is not a political endorsement. It's just stating facts.
Yeah, it's not a political endorsement, but it is an endorsement for me wanting a higher 401k and retirement return. So that's good enough for me.
Absolutely.
You know, politics is probably the dirtiest business on the planet. No questions asked. You ever watch House of Cards?
Yeah, it's also one of the most polarizing things too.
Couldn't agree with you more. But when you start talking about the money, when it's affecting your pocket, I feel like everybody can get behind that. Whether it's the gas prices, whether it's the food prices, whether it's your retirement accounts. Those are the things that matter. I mean, we only get one life here.
Right.
And we spend more than half of it working. It'd be nice to be able to retain some of that money and, God forbid, have it grow. That'd be nice.
Yep.
All right, let's get off the politics so we don't lose all of our subscribers.
Yeah.
We have to talk about this.
Yeah.
Barbie.
So we talked a little bit about a Ponzi scheme before. Another thing that caught my eye is being a potential scam here. So my daughter, and I'm sure yours did growing up. My youngest daughter loves playing with Barbie dolls, and
of course.
Something caught my attention this past week that I don't know. It kind of blew my mind. So they're always evolving, and they're coming out with these new Barbies. You know, you got Barbie veterinarian. You've got Army Barbie. You got all this different stuff. They are now making Barbies that cater to disabilities, which is completely fine. I understand. You know, you want
what do you mean
people
catering
with
to
disabilities.
What does that mean?
Well, I'll tell you in a minute. You want people with disabilities to feel they're part of something and they're not different. I get that. Mattel has just announced an African American doll with Down syndrome.
Oh my! Is this a joke?
It's almost
is
like
this a joke?
It's just it's weird.
It's not a joke.
It's not a joke. It's not a joke, and it doesn't look any different than any other Barbie. So it's basically just like they're taking a Barbie and they're
putting a label
in
on
the
it.
same mold and putting a label on it that, you know, this one has Down syndrome and it happens to be African American. There's another one now that's blind. The only difference, they give it a pair of sunglasses that aren't clear. Like you can't see through. They're solid silver sunglasses.
So the children, I'm assuming children, that would be wanting or gifted the blind Barbie,
Yes.
or to make them feel included, are blind.
Yeah, so they don't even see what it looks like.
How
anyways.
would they even see what it looks like in the first place?
To take it a step further, what kind of vision do these other dolls have?
I know, yeah. So that's a blind Barbie. So no, my Brooks Barbies have 20/20 vision.
Yeah, they're watching you while you sleep.
Oh my God. Holy shit. How do you feel about that?
I mean, to me, I get the whole, you know, wanting
To make
the
everything
kids
inclusive.
to feel inclusive to an extent, but at the end of the day, it's just a money grab.
It's 100% a money grab to me. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think it's over the top. And listen, that's what's beautiful about the free market. free market principles. If it's a good idea, the market will tell you. If it's not a good idea, people won't buy it and it'll go out of business and it'll be gone.
Yeah.
But I think it's more of a kind of a demagogue. Like they're really.
But how much is too much? Like you're gonna
Exactly.
spit out a Barbie and say this one has celiac disease.
Yeah,
And,
what's next? Oh, mine has melanoma.
Yeah.
You know, I had Hodgkin's, not lymphoma. I'd like to get a Barbie or Ken doll that has Hodgkin's disease, please.
You got to keep his clothes on. Though.
You can do its annual checkups for me. That's funny.
Actually, to take that a step further, these dolls now are getting more and more anatomically correct. Like Maisie loves to change the
Outfits,
clothes on them and
yeah.
all. And man, they got these LOL dolls. You seen those LOL dolls? They come in like a little ball, you know, and they're kind of like a surprise, and you open them up. Well, they're these boy ones, and they got little wieners. I'm not kidding.
You're joking.
I swear to God.
Well, I think this is a good time to end this while it's getting really awkward for me.
Sounds like you're getting excited to play with your dolls.
Away. Well, I think we covered a lot of different topics here, and if we somehow manage to keep any of our viewers after this, I think we're going to be in good shape. But I do like a lot of these headlines. So thank you again for joining us on this week's version of Hard Hat Highlights. We hope you subscribe to our YouTube channel called Glass Guys, and stay tuned for future episodes with Jay and I on Hard Hat Highlights. Till then, have a great weekend.